Perfect. Well, I guess we'll get started. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Jordan Mulholland. I'm from the DHS IDEAS program. Welcome to Effective Service Provision for People with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. I'm here today in partnership with HOST, as well as Rocky Mountain Human Services, Bayard Enterprises, and our partners over at Autism Community Store. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Great, thank you. So before we get started in some introductions, I just wanted to get a pre-survey out there, so it should be launching as we speak. It'll pop up right on your screen, hopefully, or if you can't see it, you'll find it in the chat. They're really just questions to help us gauge who's in the room and kind of what that foundational knowledge base is. And then we'll do a post survey at the end of this training just to see if everyone found this helpful and where we could maybe step in some more trainings down the road. So we'll leave that open as we move through some introductions, and then we'll get right into it. So as mentioned, my name is Jordan. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a program administrator. And we'll kick it off to Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby Grinstead. I'm the Associate Director of our Mill Levy program. You're going to learn a little bit about what Mill Levy is here, but with Rocky Mountain Human Services, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'll pass it over to Arnie.
I know Arnie's there.
Oh man, of all the things. Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry everybody. Arnie Swenson, Associate Director of the Mission Supports Program at Rocky Mountain Human Services. We've been at RMHS since October 13th, where we came from 7 years of Mill Levy funding at Colorado Fund for People with Disabilities, a smaller nonprofit. So you might have heard about us before, but with a different organization. Oh, he, him. Thank you.
Thanks, Arnie. Erica, do you want to just share your name, your pronouns, and where you're from?
Sure. My name is Erica. My pronouns are she, her. I'm program manager for Bayard Enterprises.
And then Shannon.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shannon Sullivan. I'm the co-founder of the Autism Community Store and the director of the Sensory Friendly Denver Project. I'm also the parent of an adult daughter who's on the DD waiver that you'll hear more about. Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon. So these are our facilitators today. Also in the room, we have my program manager, Michaela Hennig, and also supporting us, Kelsey Antoon from HOST, as well as my colleagues, Lynn and Corey, over here in the IDEAS program. We'll go ahead and move to the next slide. A little bit more about the IDEAS program. We stand for, oh, Michaela, I see you have your hand.
She sent another one.
Oh.
And
Yeah, sorry, Jordan, for interrupting. It looks like maybe the survey has been disabled, so I just wanted to bring that information out from the chat and see if there's any troubleshooting we can do before you get started.
Again. Oops, yeah, that's right. Did that work yet? Or did that show up for everyone again? Let's see. Well, I know we have Lynn on the tech working on it, so we'll keep going and hopefully we can get that working for you all. Thanks, Michaela, and thanks, Lynn, in advance. So anyway, the IDEAS program stands for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Equitable Access to Services. We are a taxpayer-funded program that is dedicated to funding supports and services for Denver residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We'll use IDD for short as we talk today. Oftentimes you'll hear our funding stream called mill levy, which is just a more technical term for property taxes, where our stream comes from. It came from a ballot measure 20 years ago, really to serve locally, local residents within the city and county of Denver. We work under these pillars of service. Today we're focusing closely on housing, inclusion, and mental health. We don't provide direct services, rather we engage with the community and learn of the gaps in services for people with IDD, and then we are the funder of those gaps. We can go to the next slide. Great, and so a little bit more about how IDEAS plugs into this larger system. Most of the funding for people with IDD comes from Medicaid, particularly a program called Home and Community-Based Services. This program is designed to support folks with various disabilities in being able to live in community and receive the care that they need to thrive. And so HCBS services are through the form of what's called waivers, and these waivers can be anywhere from long-term care, 24-hour care, where you have a live-in aid in your home, to something like day programs where you have somewhere to go daily and you receive socialization, life skills trainings, things like that. For folks with IDD, the particular waivers that they're typically enrolled in and qualify for are what's called the SLS and DD waiver. Medicaid doesn't administer these services directly, but rather they contract with regional entities to both determine eligibility, but also get folks enrolled in waivers and then connected to the appropriate services. And so for Denver County, that entity is Rocky Mountain Human Services, who's here today to talk a little bit more about that. These entities are typically called case management agencies. And so Rocky Mountain is the case management agency for Denver, meaning that all requests for disability determinations and waiver services have to go through Rocky Mountain. They're the ones that determine eligibility, and they also connect folks to the So where IDEAS come in is that Medicaid doesn't typically cover everything a person might need for their supports. And so we take what we learn in the community and we try to fill those gaps. And so a lot of our money goes directly to Rocky Mountain, knowing that they're the experts in the field that can determine those needs. But we also try to fill it out and sculpt a little bit by engaging with other partners and getting some services out the door, which is what you'll hear about today. And then lastly, we just like to echo that IDEAS funding, so any programs within IDEAS umbrella can serve folks who are undocumented. So this includes our newcomer population coming from Venezuela. Anybody with suspected IDD or IDD from that community can receive support through the IDEAS funding. And then you'll see right at the middle there, there's a star, and that's kind of where we see everything come to a focal point in terms of the services available for people with IDD in Denver. We can go to the next slide. And I will take it over to Abby.
All right. If you haven't had a chance to please go ahead and complete that pre-survey, that would be great. I think that link sounds like it is now working. So IDD, what does that stand for? That stands for Intellectual and Developmental Disability. But what is that? An intellectual disability is a condition that starts in the developmental period of a person's life when they're under age 18. It really includes deficits in both intellectual functioning and adaptive functioning. Adaptive functioning really includes multiple different domains. Social domain, that's a person's ability to be able to communicate and to interact with others. More of a conceptual domain, that is a person's academic skills, the things that they're learning through childhood of reading and writing. A practical domain, those are really those life skills of how can I take care of myself and my own personal hygiene, all the way to domestic skills of being able to do some homemaker house cleaning skills. Symptoms appear during childhood as a person is working through those different developmental domains. And those domains are really working on how my gross motor skills and fine motor skills of how am I walking and how am I able to self-feed, to my ability to be able to communicate with others in that spoken word, to being able to interact with others in that social engagement or
Abby, I think you may have muted yourself accidentally. There we go.
Thank you. Were you able to hear? Perfect. Okay, thank you for that. So I want to share that there are different levels of intellectual disability only because of how you may interact with somebody. At first, it may be a little bit hard to discern that. Every person is really unique. And so some people that have an intellectual disability, they may be able to be fully independent and they are able to communicate, with full sentences and really interact with friends and peers and family. But maybe they need some help with decision making. Perhaps they need some of those everyday living skills support. To somebody that maybe needs some more money management skills. Some people with an intellectual disability also have a social judgment impairment and really may speak in a more simplified way, all the way to somebody that is a little bit more severe or profound in their intellectual disability. And that person really relies on a caregiver or a parent for those full wraparound supports and services. And they may communicate more with gestures or with facial expressions and really need support with all of their daily living. Intellectual disabilities are considered chronic, lifelong disabilities. It's not something that you grow out of. But what we really focus on is that person's quality of life. What are the things that are important to them and for them, and really be person-centered in our approach with helping them focus on those strengths, what are their goals, and what does a good life look like for them? And so when we take a look at this span of this development, we really, in that developmental delay period, that's really from birth all the way up to age 5, where that person is working through those different developmental domains. And here at Rocky Mountain Human Services, we have services and supports tailored to supporting that person in all of those different developmental domains where there is a delay, to helping them get caught up in that domain. So that way, by the time they're ready to go to kindergarten at age 5, they're able to be caught up in all domains of their development and go to kindergarten with their same age peers. But we recognize that sometimes, rather than a delay, this might be more of that intellectual developmental disability for life. And that determination occurs at age 5. And that is done, as Jordan said, by Rocky Mountain Human Services as that CCB or Community Center Board, where there is testing that's involved with that. There's an application. There's a whole process to this developmental disability determination. And if that person is determined eligible, that determination carries with them for life. And what's really key about that is that it continues to open up those lifelong services and supports that can support somebody with living their best life. So as Jordan talked about, those Medicaid waivers, the supported living services, the DD waiver, we also have children's waivers. So there's a lot of waivers. And what I really want you to all know today is to know that Rocky Mountain Human Services is here for supports and services to help with somebody from birth through life. And that you don't have to be the expert in determining what is an intellectual disability or delay, but rather know that when you're working with somebody, how that can present and what that may look like. And Arnie's going to dive a lot deeper into that for you, but really wanted to give you a foundation of that definition and what this is, and recognition that there is an entire process that goes into this determination to really open up those lifelong services and supports. I'm going to pass it on to Arnie.
Yes, thank you, Abby, and thank you all who are working with all aspects of homelessness. I work specifically with one particular, disability, and when I see all the work that the shelter providers are doing, it blows my mind. So respect, shout out. And no one needs to be a clinician, as Abby said. And so for those of you probably maybe driving, you shouldn't be driving in your meetings, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you three things that are, signs, symptoms, maybe, indicators of what an IDD, intellectual developmental disability, might look like. One is conceptual skills, challenges with language, literacy, money, self-direction, reasoning. A second one is social skills, difficulty with interpersonal relationship skills and self-esteem issues, difficulty protecting themselves. Some people might be labeled naive or gullible. And the third one is practical skills, where there's a obvious difficulty managing living, and sometimes not an obvious difficulty managing daily living, which can include everything from bathing to transportation, coordination of your appointments, and practical skills also would include some of the challenges that folks face with employment and things like that, scheduling. So there's another piece to this slide, and I think everybody gets these slides, and you should definitely review these slides. But do these three things confirm an intellectual developmental disability? No, they don't. And so we don't need anybody to think that they have to be completely right on this or know their stuff. These are just indicators, and there is a difference with neurodivergence and those that have not only an IDD, but maybe a brain injury, maybe Alzheimer's, all kinds of stuff. There are indicators towards an IDD, and then there's the reality. And just a couple examples, like someone has autism, that doesn't mean they have an intellectual developmental disability from the criteria that the state requires that Abby touched on earlier. Maybe cerebral palsy, same thing, might present, might indicate just because of the diagnosis, but not necessarily reality. That doesn't mean that there's not a service or a long-term service and support for those folks. There are. But when it comes to the intellectual developmental disability waiver, it's really about recognizing signs, looking at the indicators. You don't need to worry about it. Like I said, you should refer to mission supports anyway, which we'll get into a little later. But I think the big thing right now that I can stress is that intellectual developmental disability is something separate from whatever else that they might have, which could include a mental illness, physical symptoms that might manifest communication that might seem like a behavior. And so, we're moving right on to that. We're getting right into it. And so that's, I think the biggest piece to all of this is being mindful of the difference that, yes, if someone has an intellectual developmental disability, that's one of the things, and anything that's around that is on top of that. So this is a big one. The intersection of IDD and homelessness. I've worked in this field a long time, and working with folks with IDD who are experiencing homelessness is a whole new world of misperceptions and what people label people as, judge people as. And I do say this, and I'll say it here, is that a lot of times some of the folks we meet that are experiencing homelessness, if they were in Special Olympics with a T-shirt on, there wouldn't be one question about any of the circles that you might see here. But when it comes to misperceptions of folks and judgments, I think when you look at this slide and non-compliant challenges with socialization and poor decision making, I think that could be anybody. I'm pretty sure that could really refer to any of us at any time in our day. So it is something that's usually quick to be judged, quick to be labeled. And people are labeled, judged, and have reputations. And those are the folks that we're working with. So we ask for, well, I do want to say this. Some of the reasons that these things might exist, trauma, for sure. I've never seen this much. And failed special education to adult services, lack of childhood skill building, lack of natural supports, being incarcerated as a youth. These things, no early intervention, it makes a difference for when they're released, discharged, or whatever. And this is what ends up getting pointed out by many people. So I think I want to just stress with this: there's an accommodation that's probably the most helpful, and I said it in the last slide, and that's being mindful that an IDD is possible, and is one of the many accommodations you can do. Is just going, yes, an IDD is possible, and we'll go into how you can refer to us. Thinking if I missed anything. Everybody's different. That's the other thing. Whether they have an intellectual developmental disability or not, there's no way to put it in a box and go, we're all going to help you out all the same. So it's very individualized, and I think that's another thing I can stress about this. I think that's what I'm done with that.
That's great, Arnie. Thank you. We can go to the next slide. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide just so we can get into some of our referring programs, but we just wanted to highlight the overrepresentation of people with IDD within the homeless community. National studies report anywhere from 12 to 39% of folks on the streets have an IDD. Here in Denver, the data estimates nearly 1 in 5 people with experiencing homelessness have an IDD. And so this is a quite large overrepresentation, and a lot of times these folks have fallen through the cracks, right? So this includes, the reasons includes many complex barriers, both individual, social, political, economic, but also systemic, right? So before there was Medicaid, most folks didn't have the opportunity to even live in community. And so housing that was being created during that time just didn't keep these folks in mind. So if we fast forward to now, where we're still working on deinstitutionalizing, integrating folks into the community where they can thrive, we don't have affordable or accessible housing that meets their needs. And so folks end up in many unsuitable options, or options that they, quite frankly, just wouldn't be of their choice. And one of them in particular is experiencing homelessness. We can go to the next slide. I think we could get back to you, Arnie. We're going to talk a little bit more about the local programs that are here to support you all, for both folks who you know have an IDD and folks that you might suspect have an IDD.
Okay. All right. Well, since I'm in charge of mission supports, I'll probably I have more info about that that I'm excited about, that's current. But mission supports is currently serving 72 people. And 43 of those folks are seeking a developmental disability determination, which could take anywhere from a couple months to a year, and sometimes over a year. It requires that we do research, find out counties and school districts that people were part of, places, maybe the hospital that they were born at, and get as much required documentation for state DD determination that we can get, and then we put that, we submit that. So that's our expertise, and we're currently partnering, as far as the folks we serve. We're currently partnering services with El Grupo Vida, with some of our new arrivals, and who have children. So we work closely with APS, CPS, Denver courts. We're also in the HMIS system, and well-powered co-responders are pals, amazing group. And since 2017, like I said, we started 2017 at a different organization. We've served 342 people, and 80 of them have been determined eligible. And the folks that weren't determined eligible, the sad news is we were able to connect a lot of those people to, not sad news, but a more appropriate waiver or the appropriate long-term services support waiver, or connect them to another county where they would receive their intellectual developmental disability services. We also we do cross-county research and shoulder-to-shoulder assistance for people, and that's what Mission Supports does. We really work. We do a lot more, but it's really about that DD determination. And now that we're at Rocky Mountain Human Services, when we get these referrals, we're able to check the whole system, including the state system, which before was really difficult to do, and it was kind of time sensitive or time limited as far as getting things done with that. So the Denver START program is funded by IDDEAS, and this is an amazing program, and I'm going to give you just some anecdotal. We work closely with Denver START, which is, I think it would be helpful to give you the national START. It's a national program. I just put it in the chat. National Center for START Services. They specialize in crisis, and I think anybody we're working with is in crisis. So they certainly are ready for more referrals than they're getting. And this is for crisis for people who have an intellectual developmental disability and also suffering from a mental health crisis. Like I said, children, I think it's ages 6 old to older. We are sharing services with someone who has we've worked with for 3 years, and in the last year of working with START and a mental health, mindful mental health person, a clinician or a provider, those behaviors and those things that we saw before have significantly reduced, and there's just more support when it comes to the stress of trying to get your benefits figured out, the stress of trying to go get in line for housing or get in line for anything, the stress of trying to understand things about benefits that nobody is explaining to you. I mean, there's just so many frustrations in this. And so Denver START has done an amazing job. They are so trained and focused on the mental health and working on the stability plans to get folks to a level of stability where they're enjoying their services, appreciating their services, and growing from their services, and individual requests. This is something that we do at Rocky Mountain Human Services Mill Levy, where there might be a need. We at Mission Supports access individual requests sometimes for temporary housing in a motel. If someone with a stability plan, we don't do a lot. Not everybody gets this kind of thing, but if it means that someone's going to have a better day the next day in their psych eval and they'll be rested, then it's worth doing. If it means that they need to be safe, it's worth doing. But these individual requests also have helped with furnishing folks with their new apartments. It has helped with providing some bridge services while their enrollment for Medicaid long-term services are kicking in. Once you're determined eligible, there's still some time for that enrollment to take place. It doesn't happen overnight. So we access individual requests for this as well. And I do know that the public also accesses individual requests, and there are some amazing, fun, life-changing requests that have been made and have been provided and purchased. So the three of us, these three programs work so close together throughout the week, as well as our relationship with Bayard, and who's coming up next. And I think Erica might be ready, but I want to share that they are amazing. Bayard Be Home, doing great work, really doing great. Okay, I'll be quiet now. Okay.
All right, thank you, Arnie. So I'm here to talk about Be Home, which stands for Bayard Enterprises Housing Options Mean Everything. And just like everyone on this has presented, we serve Denver residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or who may have intellectual and developmental disabilities. So our program is primarily composed of housing navigation, along with an optional mental health component. So that housing navigation is individualized case management to support folks with IDD and their families, or household in either finding housing, or keeping housing, finding different housing, those kinds of things. And all of our services are very individualized. To date, we have about 80 referrals, and a little over half of those are active clients in our program. Recently, we have one family that has achieved housing. And so the way we do that is supporting folks to getting connected with our friends at Mission Supports, supporting them in getting connected to the START program if there are mental health concerns. We also offer help with things like accessing public benefits, whether that's Medicaid, food assistance, TANF, those kind of things. Advocating for participants with their landlords. Maybe they're already housed, but there's some conflict that's making that housing unstable. Things like that. In terms of getting a referral to us, super important to know that as much as I'd love to, I cannot guarantee anyone is going to for sure secure housing or keep the housing that they have. However, it's really, we work collaboratively with the clients, their family, their support network. And then to make a referral to us, you can access our referral form, which I believe will be sent out to everyone after this training. It's also available on Bayard's website. And then you can also give us a call at the phone number listed below. Anybody can make that referral, whether it's a member of the public, community partner, or even the person with IDD themselves, or a parent or caregiver. Yeah, and I think also another kind of unique thing about this program is that we are able to support folks regardless of their housing status, as long as they have IDD and are in Denver County. So we can support someone if they are literally homeless, they are couch surfing, or if they have an apartment or house, but they're having trouble keeping it for whatever reason. Okay, I think that's all I had.
I'll go ahead and jump in and talk about Sensory Friendly Denver, which is a project that was originally developed to increase recreational opportunities for people who are from Denver and have IDD, acknowledging that sometimes sensory challenges can pose significant barriers to a subset of this population. We're really which is really significant. So for people with autism, about 95% of them, or up to 95%, some people think everyone experiences significant sensory processing challenges. It's a core feature of the diagnosis and of the disability, and it's also really widespread among other intellectual and developmental disabilities, and in the population in general, up to 20% of people experience sensory processing challenges, and that number is probably really significantly greater in the population of people experiencing homelessness or other challenges who have had traumatic experiences. It's very associated with that. So it's basically the idea that barriers can come in all forms, some of them being sensory. So somebody might have a sensitivity to loud noises or bright lights. Those are some of the common ones that are thrown out. But we also look at some of the other kind of functional barriers that could be challenging for the population of people with IDD, like how hard is it to navigate the space? How, would it benefit from better signage or other ways to move around? So basically, we've worked with the Denver Art Museum, Botanic Gardens, a lot of recreational facilities, but are given the barriers that we know that sensory challenges can pose, we want to explore how that can be helpful. A better understanding of sensory challenges and mitigating some of them can be helpful in the realm of housing and shelter provision, and how this could be impacting the quality of life, and even some of, as Arnie referenced, some of the things that might be seen as challenging behaviors, or something that might be presenting in a way where there's an underlying cause that could potentially be remedied. So with IDEAS, just exploring what this might look like in the residential setting. And there's 3 parts: the site assessment that we conduct with our neurodiverse inclusion team and make recommendations. There's a staff training, because we know that staff empathy can be really impactful and is modeled often by other members of a community, and just that feeling of increased acceptance can go a long way. And then we're able, on a case-by-case basis, to provide sensory equipment that can help mitigate the challenges that might exist in a setting. And that can include things like noise canceling headphones, or maybe creating a sensory safer space, depending on the needs.
Thank you so much. So we just threw a lot at you. We're gonna kind of tie the knot on referrals. Basically, we're talking about a couple things, right? We're talking about housing support, but also services support for your clients. And the reason we bring up both is that it's necessary for people with IDD to receive both. And we also know that not every time you engage with a client, you're never going to know for certain whether or not a client has an IDD. So what we're trying to drive home in this training is that if you're able to recognize the potential signs and symptoms that your client may have an IDD, it's suspected is what we often use, then that will trigger referrals to our partners. You can submit referrals to any of our partners or one of our partners. Really, if you're unsure and you don't know what program would be the most immediate need for your client, please don't worry about it. There's no wrong door. In most cases, our partners are actively working together on mutual clients, again, to kind of bring in the services side and the housing side. And we really, we know a lot of this can be really complex. And so as long as you make that referral, our partners will gather up and support the client as best they can. One thing we just empower you all to consider, whether you're a manager or a direct provider within shelters and things like that, consider ways that you could build up capacity within your team to make it easier to identify these signs and symptoms. And so it could be anywhere from maybe implementing a formal screening into your intake, or maybe doing some informal screenings, engaging with the clients a little bit more, asking questions like, oh, did you ever receive special education in your life? Things like that. Or maybe you leverage some team members who have experience working with folks with complex needs, such as people with IDD, and really lean on them to support you in your learning. And then lastly, we just want to mention that we do appreciate your patience with the referrals, especially right now. It can take quite a bit of time to get folks enrolled in services. Please know that we will respond to all referrals that come along, even if it's not right away. And so we do follow up with those. I think we can go to the next slide. Perfect. And so just to kind of summarize the main players in this work. We have Rocky Mountain Mission Supports Program, who, as Arnie presented on, is there to support you in getting your folks connected to Medicaid services and that DD determination process. Bayard Be Home is there to support in housing navigation. And then the Denver START program is for clients who you suspect might have an IDD and are experiencing a mental health crisis or at risk of a mental health crisis. Right there, you'll see the direct links to the referral forms are hyperlinked there, also with the emails and the phone numbers. If you already have a client that's enrolled in Rocky Mountain and you have a question regarding their case, or maybe you submitted a recent referral, Rocky Mountain has asked that you email right at the left-hand side there, cmaquestions@rockymountainhumanservices.org, and email your questions there, and they'll respond as soon as they can. And lastly, I think we're at the end. We did great on time, so we have plenty of time for questions. And we also will have a post survey that we'll launch here shortly, where folks can just let us know, for one, if this was helpful for you all, but also we have a few lists of potential secondary trainings that we've been thinking about. Maybe you're interested in learning more about the waiver process and what it looks like in terms of being a case manager and getting those documents. Or maybe you're interested more in how do you engage with folks with IDD and ensuring that it's trauma-informed and person-centered. Maybe you're interested in learning about the intersectionality of this community. Maybe it's ADA, guardianship. They're all listed there. Please click any of them or all of them that seem of interest to you. And then, yeah, that is it. I'll leave the space for questions now. If you go, Kelsey, to the next slide, which will be also, we'll send all of this out after, and then everything's going to be, the recording and everything will be online on the host website. But these are just some acronyms that you might see when you're kind of working in the system. As you all know, systems love acronyms, and so these are often ones that come up that might be helpful for you in understanding. With that, we'll leave it open for any questions. Great, and I see the poll just got launched. Thank you, Lang. If you do have a question, you can just either raise your hand or come off mute or type it in the chat.
Hey, Jordan, this is Michaela. Wonderful presentation. All. Thank you so much for bringing that information. I know that folks may be processing a lot of that information that we provide right now. So while folks are considering what questions they might have, maybe we can ask those of you that have joined us today to share some of your experience with us. I'm curious to hear not only what questions you have, but what has your experience been working with this population, and what barriers have you encountered? If anyone wants to provide a question or share those experiences.
And even if, as we're talking, some of this might be very new to you all. And so even, at the bare minimum, no question is a bad question. So please just go ahead and ask anything that comes to mind.
I have a question. For referrals, so I work as a site manager for a shelter space, and so it's like sometimes we have folks that maybe we think would benefit from these services, but maybe they themselves aren't interested. So it's like, really, with referrals, are we referring without consent or with consent, or how does that work?
That's a great question, and Arnie, you can jump in on this one too. We always want those referrals to be with consent. We want to make sure that this person, as we talked about, we really focus on that person-centered approach. And so services and supports are only going to be as successful as the person's ability to engage with them and want to be a part of those. I think sometimes that's one of the hardest intersections, and Arnie can certainly talk about this from his experience. When we recognize that somebody could likely benefit from services and supports, but is hesitant to or doesn't want to. And so I think that opens up the conversation of how can we maybe talk with this person to share with them of why this would be beneficial or supportive. What could these services and supports, because services and supports is kind of a scary thing, right? And you can kind of put up your defenses of like, I don't need anything. I don't need help. Who are you to tell me that I need help, right? And so Arnie and his team are really skilled at working with somebody and talking with them about how getting connected can really benefit and support them. And so I would say in that instance, we always want to have that consent, but maybe it can be, you know what, let's connect you with Arnie, bring it down even to just a personal name level. Let's connect you with Arnie because he would love to have a conversation with you about what this could look like, right? And start to take some of the stigma away from it, take some of the system away from it. Does that help?
I'll add one
Please.
one little thing, and that's that I always recommend just when folks, not many people are interested in long-term services supports, especially if they're young. They're like, oh, long-term services supports, I'm young. I mean, the whole thing is just just something different to think about. And honestly, a lot of the people that we meet that are prone to, say, refuse services had some difficult childhood experiences in foster care. So they don't have much trust and hope for any service. So what I would recommend, and for folks, for case managers who are like, well, we got to get this guy service, or at least see where he's at RMHS. You just one thing to tell the person is, hey, let's just meet this guy. Let's just try this program out, because they do a lot of work. They got a lot of knowledge, and they work on setting you up for the future with some long-term services that you're qualified for. It's helping you out for the future. Once you get a place to live, you're going to find out what your needs are, and that's something we really do discover. Is then people are like, whoa, this is scary living by myself. And they need some support, and important support. So just, you want to meet this crazy guy that's Arnie, and just see if you think what he's got is okay. It's something you might want to try. So just soft stuff like that. And once we meet, it can be cool sometimes.
That was a wonderful response. Sure. Go ahead, Abby, if you wanted to add anything more to that.
Just one quick, just because we go birth through life, you may encounter people with a parent or a caregiver that have a child where you recognize, oh, there might be some concerns with their development, as this child is in experiencing this place. And that can be a really delicate conversation to have with a parent or a caregiver. And so I would also, we can certainly talk about more with that if anybody has encountered that and what that can look like, and maybe some talking points within that. But just wanted to share that too.
And then David kindly offered in the chat a primary barrier that he has encountered.
Hello? Are you there? This is an important message on April 4th, 2020. Debt Advisors United trying to reach outstanding tax.
And I'm sorry, is it Christy? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Might have been an accident. I think they may have muted, so
Gotcha. Okay.
You can continue, Michaela.
I didn't want to speak over anyone. I just really appreciated David's comment
that they have found it extremely difficult to navigate the difference between IDD and cognitive impairing TBI that occurred later in life. Seen a lot of older clients that don't remember their childhoods clearly, especially with the intersections of trauma, which is, for all of us that have worked with at-risk folks, I think that experience in serving someone with all those intersectional experiences resonates really deeply, and would love to hear Arnie or Abby speak to that a little bit more.
We sort that out once we start ordering records and receiving them. It becomes pretty clear where things are at. So it is common for us just to look at something and go, whoa, that brain injury happened at 23 years old, not 20, for instance, which makes a big difference for the D waiver and things. So those kind of things just happen. That's why I just refer to mission supports. And also, you never know, we can look up in the systems, including any state system, that doesn't require a lot of research, and we can see if they were in a TBI program in a different county, or if they were signed up for long-term services supports for something else. So yeah, it's difficult, but that's something that we work through, and then we do a switch to the single entry point waiver and get them connected with that.
Yeah, and just to kind of elevate that a little bit, if you are running into the situation where you're like, I don't know, this person they say they have a brain injury, but I'm not sure when it happened. When you make that referral to mission supports, they're the ones that will ultimately make that determination. And so even though at the end of the day, mission support serves people with IDD, Rocky Mountain is great because they serve all the other waivers within the system. So they'll be able to connect folks with TBI with the appropriate waiver for that disability. Stay on a little bit longer for any other questions. Again, if you haven't yet, please take the poll. I believe that it should be in the chat still. You may have to scroll up a little, but just be really helpful for us to know, where to go next in supporting you all.
And I'm just going to double echo what was said in the beginning. So if anyone here on this training went to any of the ones that we did house specific in January, the same kind of process is going to be the follow-up. So it may take a week or two before our IT system can get to it, but we will kind of clean this up and make it pretty organized. It'll end up being on YouTube, but we will also send out the direct link to that. But then that link will also be through the host website. A kind of standardized email that y'all got for this invite though will go out, so you can kind of have access to that. Feel free to forward it as you have folks in your agency and use it at will. So I just really appreciate all these trainers today and giving us all this information. I know it's super helpful, and I in my position get a lot of comments and questions about how to navigate such a complex system, especially as it overlays with homelessness and intersects there. So just thank you all so much, and I really, really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Arnie, I see your hand.
I also just wanted to give some context for something that Jordan said earlier about being patient. There's a major redesign that's occurred at the state level at healthcare policy and finance that is affecting all long-term services supports enrollment and intake and permanent services, along with the little glitches that are happening with Medicaid in general that we've heard about on the news and things. So I kind of want to make a point of saying the three mission supports, Denver START, individual requests that are provided through RMHS, Bayod's Be Home, these services are all forging forward in spite of this redesign and the complications and the delays. And so there's assistance that's being provided for people with IDD who are really struggling with this, with a lot of the system issues that are happening. So thankfully, there's a lot being done at the organizational level to get this going and get things smoother. It's already working, but I think what's great is Mill Levy has been able to help out people in Denver who are struggling with this state issue. And it's whether it's a mental health support that they're getting, whether it's whatever. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
That's really great context. Thank you, Arnie. Well, I think we'll be on till at least noon. So if you want to stay on and ask any more questions, we're here. Otherwise, we'll allow you all to head out. And we appreciate your time here. Truly, we are honored to be able to intersect both systems here when supporting you all, and we continue to do so. And so just know we're always available as a resource. Oh, the survey is not working.
Thanks for that feedback, folks. Sorry you're experiencing some difficulty with the survey, and we'll try and get that posted again. Bear with us.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that you get a copy of the slides. We'll also provide a one-pager that will kind of outline the same referrals, if that's a little bit easier for you to access, and this will be online. In terms of the survey, maybe if it's still giving people's issues, maybe we could talk about sending it out through email after this, hopefully. Because I don't know why it's not loading. It says that it's there, but
we're working on troubleshooting. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. That's why we have you today. We appreciate that. Well, great. Thank you all. Thanks, Shannon. Enjoy the sunshine today. Great. It worked for most folks.
Kayla and Jordan, did you want me to stay on? Or are you?
Oh,
Okay.
if you need to head out, that's totally fine. Thank you, Abby, so much.
Thank you. Bye.
So long.
Bye, Arnie. Thank you. Bye, Erica.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, cool. I launched again. Oh. I don't know what that one is. Check and X. That was an oops. Okay, that's.
Yeah, that was an oops. Sorry about that.
Well, great. I think we're good here. We'll look at the polls and see what our responses are, and then we'll make sure if we need more, we'll send it out. But all right, y'all. Thank you.